Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today we're going to be taking one more look at my wide receiver rankings for the draft class of rookies here for the 2022 season. The draft begins this Thursday evening with round 1 being covered, rounds 2 and 3 on Friday, and then things finish up on Saturday for day 3. So today we're going to be taking a look again one more time at my top 12 wide receivers in this draft class. I'll be talking through the skill sets that these players bring to the table and how I could see these guys being integrated into NFL offenses. And then obviously we'll be talking a bit about some of the fantasy football utility that comes from those skill sets, red flags of these players, as well as obviously what stands out the most as being positive factors in their NFL skill sets. So I'll be taking a look at these rankings again for fantasy football purposes immediately or the week after the NFL draft occurs. We'll have landing spots, know a bit more about situations, and then obviously the coaching staffs that these players land with, so we'll be able to draw some more conclusions and project how they'll actually be used and have their skill sets applied to their offenses. So if that's something you'd be interested in and you're new around here, make sure to drop down, as always, click that subscribe button and turn the bell on so you're never late for an episode. But with that being said, we're not going to waste any more time, and let's dive in to my number 1 player in the draft class of 2022 as the wide receiver position. Alrighty, here we go. A couple quick notes. If you want to share your opinions with me about your wide receiver rankings or what you think about these prospects, make sure to leave a comment down in the comment section below. You can feel free to ask me any questions about these players as well. Your fantasy teams, whether that be a redraft or dynasty question, I've got you guys covered. And if you want to talk some fantasy football or anything NFL with me this offseason and throughout the summer here as we get towards the fantasy football year, go check out the SFS community Discord server. The invite link to that is in the description of today's episode, as well as our social media accounts. Go follow me on Twitter. I'll be posting a lot of updates and my thoughts and opinions on the news and rumors that come out ahead of the draft, because I'm sure there's going to be a couple more trades. And obviously, we're going to continue learning information about these players and what the teams think about them, and any rumors about who's going to be taken by what teams as that draft approaches. So, with that being said, Garrett Wilson has been my number 1 wide receiver in the class of 2022 throughout the entire pre-draft process here, or at least since the conclusion of this college football season. I have been in love with Garrett Wilson's skill set since day 1. I'm absolutely all in on him as a player. I think he has all the traits, physical intangibles, the unteachable things as well that it takes to be a number 1 wide receiver in an offense at the next level. And I think he has the potential to be a dominant player. When you talk about Garrett Wilson's athletic measurables, his 40-yard dash was fantastic. He ran an official time of 4.38, which is, again, very, very speedy. And he actually out-tested his teammate at OSU, Chris Olave, who I thought was one of the faster receivers downfield in college football, so I was really impressed to see those testing numbers. When you talk about the skill set, the traits he brings to the table, I think he is a dang good route runner, in my opinion, the best in this class. His ability to separate from defensive backs and his body control to make some of the tougher contested grabs in, or at least at the college level, was something that was very, very encouraging for me. I think he'll continue to refine and develop that skill set here as he moves into the next level at the National Football League. And I expect him to be one of the first wide receivers taken off the board. So in terms of the draft capital that's going to be invested into him, I think you're going to hear his name quite early. And again, I do think that he has been the number 1 player throughout this draft process. We're going to talk about a guy here in just a second, Treylon Burks, who for a while was a lot of people's number 1, but it's always been Garrett Wilson for me. And again, I think he has all of the traits you look for in an elite number 1 wide receiver at the next level. Here he is, Treylon Burks, a guy who used to be maybe the consensus wide receiver 1 in this draft class, especially amongst the Dynasty Fantasy Football community. This is a name that has gotten a lot of hype because of the physical traits that he brings to the table. This is a physical, thick build for a wide receiver and a guy who can really do a lot of damage after the catch. I think the Treylon Burks overall, though, or I know for a fact that his draft stock and community hype was hampered, though, by his outing at the NFL Combine. His testing numbers were not fantastic. The 4.55 40-yard dash isn't something that's a total deal breaker for me. You still got him, or see that I have him here as my wide receiver 2 in this class. But I do think that put a little bit of a damper on the overall community's outlook on his ceiling. Because let's face it, the athletic intangibles are something that we value highly and something that can't be overlooked. But again, when you do look at players, and these two players I'm about to talk about have entirely different skill sets than Treylon Burks, but when you talk about two of the best wide receivers in the game right now, Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp, their 40-yard dash times were not the best. They both ran, 4.6 plus 40-yard dashes. So you're not talking about guys who are absolute burners. It doesn't mean that Treylon Burks can't be successful at the next level because he didn't have a 4.4 or sub 4.4 40-yard dash. He still definitely has things that you can't teach, and that being those physical gifts. Again, the big size, and the build, 6'3", 200 plus pounds, or 220 is about what he goes. He's basically the size of a running back. He talked about at the Combine how one of the players he wants to mold his game after, or thinks he can be very similar to, is Deebo Samuel, who we think of as one-of-one type player. But when you look at the body that Treylon Burks has, the ability, and how they used him at Arkansas as a run-after-catch player, getting the ball out in space to him near the line of scrimmage, there's a lot of things to work with that you really like to see here. So he could be that quote-unquote wide back type. We'll see if that's how a team implements him now, and also if he wants to continue to be used in that way after seeing some of the contract issues that Deebo Samuel is going through right now. It's a completely different discussion, but obviously when a team is using you in such a physical way, they're going to see your shelf life a little bit differently. So Treylon Burks, though, still a highly talented player, someone who I think has a high degree of pedigree entering into this draft, however. And I think he is someone who will still hear his name called in round 1. However, again, that 40-yard time has definitely put some question marks into people's brains about when he is going to be coming off the board here in this draft. At number 3, I've got Drake London, the wide receiver from USC. Now, Drake London is somebody that I haven't been nearly as bullish on as a lot of other people in the greater NFL and fantasy communities out there. However, I do represent, again, the unteachable things that he does bring to the table. The knock that I've had with Drake London is he isn't someone that separates at an elite level like some other guys you see on the list today, namely Garrett Wilson. That's what made me fall in love with him so early on, is just how much separation he was creating and the distance he was creating between himself and the defensive backs. Drake London hasn't necessarily been that guy in college. Now, he is someone who didn't have fantastic quarterback play, so you've got a lot of underthrown passes and imperfect ball placement, which is something that factors into that separation because you can't quite distance yourself at a maximum level from a player if you're sitting waiting for a deep ball to reach its destination. So we'll give him a slight break there. He is someone, though, who after the catch is very quick for a guy of his size. I would say his maximum best case scenario, his high end turnout would be a Mike Evans level player, a very large 6'5". He tested in about 6'4", closer to 6'4" than 6'5", 215, but still a massive frame, huge catch radius. It has the ability to be a 50-50 ball dominator and a guy that wins a lot of high point catches at the next level and becomes a menace down in the red zone. So there's a lot of things you like to see here. Landing spot, something I'm very interested in. I think he will have high draft capital. I wouldn't be surprised to see him be drafted before the likes of a Treylon Burks, who was my number 2 player in this draft class. But I think that London's skill set will be highly touted here, highly valued, and I think he will ultimately land in a situation where he should see a healthy amount of targets day one. So I'm interested to see how he ends up turning out with hopefully better quarterback play at the next level. Comparatively, when you translate that QB play into the next level, obviously the quarterback he plays with is going to be better than his quarterback was at USC. But again, a lot of interesting things to take into consideration there with Drake London. At number 4, I've got Chris Olave, the other Ohio State wide receiver. Chris Olave is so damn quick. This is a guy who gets in and out of his breaks with lightning speed. I've seen really great work from him running routes in the red zone and separating instantly from defensive backs, even in press coverage or playing very tight to the line of scrimmage. This is a guy who I think gets marginalized by some as just a deep ball route runner, and he is certainly someone who does that at a high level. He is an elite downfield separator, super smooth. One of his nicknames in college was Mr. Smooth. I just love how this guy moves. I really liked him and thought he might come out last year as a junior, but he stayed for his senior season. Obviously, that'll probably benefit his draft stock a little bit because I think last year he would have been a later first round, early second round pick. This year, I absolutely think he goes on day one. I think he's that type of a player. 4.39 40-yard dash. Again, super fast, can separate very quickly, gets in and out of his breaks in a flash, and is someone I cannot wait to see at the next level. I think he has a chance to be a number one option for a team after he develops a little bit. I think it's more likely he probably falls into a situation where he's a number two receiver day one, but I do think he does have the option, or the ability rather, to develop into that role throughout his career. Jameson Williams at number 5 here is someone I have just a slight, I would even call it a half notch, not even a full notch below Chris Olave, a half notch below him. This is someone who I've heard from some NFL draft scouting outlets have as their number one wide receiver in this class. Now, this is a very, very talented player, probably even a better athlete than a Chris Olave. We didn't get to see him test, obviously, due to that ACL injury, which is something that factors in very slightly into my evaluation process here. I'm not going to underestimate the effects of that injury and what it's going to have on him as early as next season. All signs point to him having a successful recovery right now and being on a good timeline. And it's not something I want to weight too heavily, but again, you can't overlook it entirely because they do say to make a full, you can start playing contact sports after about 9 months, but in order to get that full recovery and truly back to yourself 100% or maybe even stronger, it takes about a full calendar year. So that's something that you're factoring in a little bit here, but the ceiling is sky high. Absolute elite athlete, super twitchy, the ability to separate downfield again is someone who I've seen enough of underneath in his film at Alabama, dominated in the SEC, had super good levels of production, not something that you really care too much about at the college level. Production is not king at the college football level. Obviously, for Dynasty Fantasy Football, you're looking a lot at draft capital and traits, but the traits are fantastic. They are there. I think the route running is something that needs to be refined a little bit, but the skills, again, that I've seen on tape have indicated that he has the potential to refine those traits and is someone who I think has a massive ceiling at the next level, especially if he sees his draft stock slip a little bit because of the ACL. He could find himself with very good quarterback play at the next level, and obviously the things he brings to the table as an athlete cannot be undervalued or understated. George Pickens at number 6 here is another receiver I really love. When you frame this draft class up against the 2021 draft class, there isn't necessarily your Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith trio of just bona fide studs, but this is a very deep class. There's a lot of really, really quality players with really, really good ceilings, but you don't have those day one studs that necessarily could come in and be difference makers instantly. But again, you do have very talented pieces and guys who I think in a couple of seasons, 3 seasons even, could be dominant players at the NFL level. And George Pickens has the prototypical X-wide receiver build, can be an absolute alpha in an offense, had one of the highest success rates against press man coverage at college. And in 2019, as a freshman for this Georgia offense, he impressed from day one. This is a guy who's been separating downfield at an elite level, has the athleticism to, again, win matchups vertically and be a super imposing threat downfield. If he refines his intermediate and short route running concepts, and this is someone I expect to divert a lot of attention and focus to those areas of his game because he said he wants to play like Devontae Adams. At 6'3", 200 pounds with the athletic measurables that this guy has, he could be a dominant player and someone that absolutely crushes at the next level if he's able to maximize his ceiling and find himself in a situation where he's set up for success. At number 7 here, I've got Skyy Moore. Number 7 feels low for Skyy Moore. However, again, with the depth that this class has, I have troubles putting him above George Pickens, Jameson Williams, Chris Olave. But Skyy Moore keeps checking off boxes. Let's not get anything mixed up about that. This is a guy who, although he's playing at a university that isn't the highest level of competition, facing the highest caliber of play, he's producing, he's finding ways to separate, and he has shown that he can be a very valuable part of a passing game. Again, I feel like 7's a little bit low here, but there are really, really talented players with slightly better overall athletic measurables. 5'11", runs a 4.41 40-yard dash, a guy who I looked at initially in my pre-draft process as a primary slot option, but he can absolutely stretch the field, which isn't something that you see all slot receivers do. I initially pegged him as a guy who could be a quarterback's best friend. I think he's super twitchy in and out of his breaks, or shifty rather is a better word. I don't think he's twitchy like a Jameson Williams is per se, but is able to get in and out of his breaks very clean, and again is very shifty at the top of his routes and can break in or out very effectively. That's why I loved him at first. He gets to the combine though and runs that 4.41 40-yard dash, and dang, I'm starting to fall in love with this guy as a person who can stretch the field, line up outside the numbers occasionally. It's maybe not where I'd love to see him all the time, but there's a lot of stuff to like here. I think he'd be a fantastic slot option at the next level, and again, he adds another layer to the game when he's able to run over the top. And if you've got, your nickel and dime defense on the field, and you're not covering him with your offense or your defense's best coverage players, I think he can do some damage and again be a quarterback's best friend here as he moves into the NFL. Christian Watson at number 8 is someone who athletically has a lot more to offer than a Skyy Moore when you talk about the frame particularly that he has. Now, Christian Watson and Skyy Moore are both dang good athletes per se, but you can't teach 6'5", and at 207 pounds, Christian Watson gives you a lot of options and a lot of opportunity to be a dominant player at the next level. Now, this is a bit of a more raw prospect. You've got a Division II player here at NDSU, so you're talking about the school that Trey Lance and Carson Wentz come from. Not an NCAA team. And level of competition is something that is a fair question mark to raise. However, when you look at him, he did exactly what you should do against lower levels of competition, and that's dominate. And this is a player who, at that size, running the way he runs, a 4.36 40-yard dash, I mean, that is just absurd. You've got guys like Marquez Valdes-Scantling doing that in the NFL right now, but MVS is a twig. This is a guy who's got a lot more muscle to him, a lot more ability to play physical football, and if he finds himself in the right situation, you could see him going as a fringe round 1 player. If he goes at the end of round 1 to a Green Bay Packers, to the Kansas City Chiefs, and gets tied to an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes, you could start to see those traits and those skills unlocked and the potential tapped into a lot earlier, and him have major success at the next level. 4.36 is ridiculously fast at this size, and again, he's going to be someone that could be an absolute menace at the next level with that size, ability to win contested balls, and just run past people. That's going to be something that is a major watch for me. Jahan Dotson out of Penn State is someone at number 9 here who I really like to be a high-level number 2 in the National Football League. His size to me doesn't indicate that he could be an NFL option or an NFL offense's number 1 option, at least not a high-level NFL offense. To me, I see comps in the way that the Ravens use Hollywood Brown at 5'11", 183. This is a smaller prospect, not the biggest wide receiver in the world. He's definitely on the smaller side of things here, but he is a burner. He can fly down the field, has fantastic hands. He's in the 96th percentile for having success against zone coverage in college via Matt Harmon's reception perception. So very impressive stuff to see there. You love to see that, and he can win deep again, which is crucial. I saw him in person at Wisconsin this year, and he was running past people all game long, absolutely torching kids over the top, creating 15-plus yards of separation, but the quarterback play was so brutal. I mean, you're talking about him literally just flying past players down the football field, and, I was up high in the stands, so I could see the pure amount of separation he was getting, and by the time the football got there, he still had 5 to 7 yards of separation. Absolutely dominated that game. Penn State won. And obviously after the catch, being the speed demon that he is, he creates more distance between himself and the defender. So you're getting a heck of an athlete here. Again, not someone that's a huge prospect. Very, very fast, though. Great against zone coverage. Fantastic hands. And he had to deal with trash quarterback play at Penn State. So you're looking at someone who could have produced more numbers had he been in a better situation in that aspect. David Bell at number 10 here, a player who definitely does not have the physical gifts. When you talk about athleticism that some of these other names have, particularly that 40-yard dash at 4.65, it's a bit underwhelming. But again, 40-yard dashes are important, but you got to put it into context here. It's not everything when we talk about wide receivers. If 40-yard dash was the most important thing, then John Ross and Anthony Schwartz would be the best players in the NFL, and that's certainly not the case right now. So David Bell, a really complete player at 6'2", 205. I think he has a really nice build to be a complete player, and that's the skill set he brings to the next level. I think that's a fantastic, again, size to be at for a prototypical wide receiver. I've heard him kind of called a tweener in terms of his size, but I think that 6'2", 205 is a great spot to be at. You see a lot of the best wide receivers in the game hovering anywhere between 5'11" to 6'3", so obviously you can get a wide variety of different skill sets between those two heights. But those are the guys that typically have success is within that range of 4 inches or so. So David Bell, again, a really complete player. I've heard him called a poor man's Rashad Bateman from last year's draft class. Another super complete and polished wideout. His routes are good. His ability after the catch is okay as well. And I think that David Bell is probably more of a day 2 prospect. We're starting to get to the later stages of this list, so you're looking at guys that aren't going to get the highest level of draft capital, but still someone to keep your eye on in second rounds of rookie dynasty drafts. I would keep your eye on David Bell as someone that has a lot of upside. Wan'Dale Robinson is someone whose skill set I absolutely love. However, the size is not great here. A former running back, finished his career out, obviously, at Kentucky. 5'8", 170, though, is the big red flag. That's not the build typically that you see out of a number 1 or at times even a number 2 wide receiver in an offense. I think that he might get reduced per se to somewhat of a gadget role. However, the way that Kentucky used him was super exciting. It was kind of that Kadarius Toney type role, get the ball out in space, electric after the catch. Again, the fact that he was a former running back, you can make that wide back comparison or to Deebo Samuel or whatever, but Wan'Dale is literally 50 pounds lighter than Deebo Samuel for a guy who's a 220-pound wide receiver. Deebo is a big human being. He's actually bigger than all of the running backs on San Fran's roster. So Wan'Dale Robinson is not that. He is very, very small in comparison to those guys. Again, smaller than Kadarius Toney too. So you're getting a really nice skill set. Again, this is an electric player out in space. Very, very athletic, 4.44 40-yard dash. I love the potential here, but I think it's less likely that you're going to get a superstar stud wide receiver in Wan'Dale Robinson, and more likely that you can get a high upside piece that might take some time to get integrated into his offense. It's going to take him, or it's going to take finding the right situation, the right coach to unlock his skill set to its fullest potential. Again, size is the biggest deal for me here. 5'8", 170 is just, to me, that is a really odd tweener size, because you're looking at a short wide receiver who's also in the weight department quite small as well. So I love his tape. Super explosive player, but there are some significant red flags. And then John Metchie here at number 12. Now, John Metchie is kind of the forgotten player in this year's draft class. I really, really went back and forth putting him higher on this list. And I wish he would get more attention, more media coverage, because if you go back to the 2020 season, John Metchie was being talked about as, the potential between him, excuse me, and then obviously Jameson Williams would come along later. We were talking about John Metchie being potentially the top wide receiver in this draft class, or maybe even being a better prospect than, Henry Ruggs or Jerry Jeudy, some of the guys they had on the roster at the time. And the ACL injury was kind of devastating to his draft class, or his draft stock. Even though Jameson Williams suffered from that as well, we talk a lot more about Jameson Williams because of that elite level athleticism, and we forget, I feel like, a lot about John Metchie, who is still a very, very good player in his own right. So 6 foot, 195 pounds, fantastic production in the SEC, 96 grabs, 1,142 yards, 8 touchdowns. You're playing the highest level of competition, and you're dominating. And to me, that's something that matters. I would strongly consider putting him over a Wan'Dale Robinson. It was a paper-thin margin for me, but the ACL injury is something I did, again, have to factor in here to an extent. But you've got a high level of competition again, fantastic success against that level of competition. I just read a Bleacher Report article this morning. It said he was having an AP, that being Adrian Peterson level recovery from that surgery. So it sounds like this guy is a freak coming back off the injury. I love his tape as well. Again, not as elite of an athlete as a Jameson Williams is, but still someone highly capable of having success at the next level. And I think if he finds the right situation, he could be one of those guys that you look back and you say, wow, why didn't we covet him more heading into this draft process? And why did we not, at the end of the day, give him more respect heading into the 2022 draft? So that'll round out the 12 wide receivers for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's video. Remember, if you're new around here, drop down, click that subscribe button, and like today's video if you enjoyed. Also, turn that bell on so you're never late for a video. We're going to be posting running back rankings, my top 12, as well as my top 6 QBs, diving into that a little bit here, and hopefully one final mock draft ahead of Thursday's draft. Really excited about this stuff. I can't wait. I'll be active on Twitter all week. Again, check out the community Discord. Follow me on Twitter at FantasySizzle. The links to both of those are in the description of today's episode. And I will see you guys in the next video. Again, comment any questions you have as well. Let me know your thoughts and opinions and all that great stuff. I'll see you next time. Peace out.